Chapter 12, Classification and Division Papers. In a classification paper, members of a large group are categorized based on a single principle. What you will find is that the resulting pieces still display the characteristics of the original group. Take, for example, breakfast cereals. A classification paper on breakfast cereals might break down into Fruit Loops, Apple Jacks, Cocoa Krispies, Boo Berry, and others, of course. If I put an Apple Jack on the table in front of you, you would still be able to tell that it was a piece of breakfast cereal. An example of the smallest part of a classification paper. Most of you will recognize this as a molecule of water. It still retains all of the characteristics of water and is recognizable in this form. This is how classification papers are. Division papers, though, they are similar to classification papers. In them, the resulting part is not able to be recognized as part of the original. In other words, if I take the first example of the cereals that I gave you for the classification paper, I could further break the single Apple Jack into flour, sugar, food coloring, and other ingredients. Then if I were to put the flour in front of you with no context and were to ask you what it was, you would not be able to identify it as part of an Apple Jack. Notice that a process paper is a type of a division paper. By just looking at the part, you would not be able to identify what process you were working on. Let's take our second example, the molecule of water. If I were to just give you the elements oxygen and hydrogen as you see in the slide here, you would not know what compound, if any, they were from. You might be able to guess, but you could not be sure. Both classification papers and division papers need a thesis, order, and details. Note that you can use any of the 6 orders for these papers, depending on what the subject is. There are a few things you need to watch out for when you're writing these papers. Make sure that you stay consistent when you choose to apply classification. Once you start in a direction with your carving up your parts, continue down that path through the whole paper. Also, as with all of the other papers, make sure that you define jargon and any words that you may be using in a unique way. Finally, make sure that you are aware of your audience and decide whether you need to give a brief definition of the category or whether they have enough knowledge to just give your examples so that your readers will be able to understand what you're trying to get across to them.